Emotional intelligence is a cornerstone of education. Without it, and without helping students' own development of it, teaching academic content is inefficient. Today, I'm going to discuss the research that has been done into emotional intelligence and how pivotal it is to education, and how we as teachers can intentionally educate our students in emotional intelligence. My name is James Levi Burnfin, and I'm a first year T2T candidate and Masters of Education candidate at Fort Hays State University. This is my first year in education. There is a large and growing body of evidence that demonstrates how these competencies positively impact behavior and academic achievement, increase graduation rates, and promote strong post-school outcomes. The College and Career Competency Wheel categorizes 26 research-based competencies that are critical for positive in-school and post-school outcomes. That was written by Patricia M. Noonan and Amy S. Gamer Erickson on page 6 of their book, The Skills That Matter. Based on the most current research, Erickson and Noonan say, ignoring emotional intelligence is to ignore the basics of education. There's a foundation that has to be set for all students in order to most effectively teach. Students need to know that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and how to hold a pencil, and those have to be explicitly taught at some point along the way. Same should be done for the competencies that Noonan and Erickson discuss. Competencies are identified as areas of emotional intelligence that need to be explicitly taught to students. The National Research Council split those into 3 different groups called interpersonal, intrapersonal, and cognitive. Noonan and Erickson explained that these competencies can be integrated into academic instruction using specific practices. Cognitive competencies, organization, problem solving, time management, etc., in that yellow part of the circle there, are taught within usual day-to-day instruction through assignments and assessments. But interpersonal and interpersonal fall well behind. The good news? Schools across the country have identified these needs and set up departments to try to address these needs. And solid, effective teaching practices already touches on several of these competencies. But, like Noonan and Erickson write, guidance counselors' caseloads are very high, and their job responsibility is diverse. Working with 300 to 1 caseloads and setting up schedules and trying to keep students on the correct academic track. For gen ed teachers, there's a general variability in which competencies are taught and how competencies are being taught across content areas and from general education teacher to general education teacher. Plus, teachers have multiple preps and are spending a lot of their time just trying to navigate the educational curriculum, let alone adding an emotional intelligence component to it. And for special education students, access to transition services is often limited for students who receive instruction primarily within general education classes. Because of this, many students who could greatly benefit from transition services and supports have difficulty receiving them simply due to the nature of the school day, Noonan and Erickson write. So what can we do to improve this? First, it must be school-wide, with the foundation set in core classes and then supplemented from there through discipline systems, electives, and extracurricular activities. Schools should split up the focus area by department, science, English, math, etc. Competency instruction is not as effective when offered in a limited or isolated fashion, such as during advisory periods, Noonan and Erickson wrote on page 9 of their book. So what that means is, if you have a mentoring period or advising period, it can't just stop there. It can start there, but don't limit it there. So you need to split them up into English maybe takes self-efficacy, and math takes something else, and science takes something else. And you hit those head on in those departments and then scaffold from there and move outwards. So Garden State High School does a thing called SABRS, where they have to have teachers fill out a survey about the students, where teachers rate students on a couple of different scales based on their outward behavior. Then students also fill out a survey on their own with the same scale. Administrators look for any large discrepancies between teachers' observations and students' own answers to see if students need some type of intervention. The school will do another round of surveys later in the year to see if student scores have changed as well and find more discrepancies if there is any. I have decided to do something more specific in my AVID class, where I had my students take a needs assessment through cccframework.org, an online vertical of the textbook written by Noonan and Erickson that offers additional resources and support for teaching emotional intelligence. The results showed that many of my students could identify when they were falling behind, but did not understand how to begin to catch up. They didn't know where to start. Luckily, in my AVID class, I have a little bit of flexibility to help a whole class with that, since organization is one of the key components of an AVID curriculum. So I devoted an entire period where I had my students organize what assessments they were late, turn in, what assessments they had coming up, and then help them prioritize based on current grades in those classes and then current mastery of their content. Then students created a schedule of to-dos for the rest of the week to help them catch up. I was explicitly teaching a strategy to address an area of need for my students. Families can help too. As schools become more comfortable addressing emotional intelligence, it can extend into students' home life through guardian and family education as well. Guardians are busy and high schools are too. The time spent together is less and less as students move through high school. But an organized framework from which to work, like the CCC wheel provided on the earlier slide and on cccframework.org, can provide a starting point for families and students to begin discussions and to begin to understand each other through emotional intelligence. Here's some of the references and sources I use to put together this presentation. If you need some more information, I would definitely suggest visiting cccframework.org. It has a ton of resources, a lot more assessments in which you can take a look at and assess your students and their potential needs that they might have. Thank you very much.